2030.
Saudi Arabia, the Public Investment Fund,
It's a
there's
big
a lot of excitement
It's
around
transformational
NEOM specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla, yalla, yalla.
This is the 2030 episode 11. Dr. Hannah Almoyabid, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm back in the United States of America, working on my suntan, as hopefully you can see, although the really bright light may wash it out, bring out the whiteness in the skin. How are you? You were just on vacation?
I was. So my children had what they call the half-term break here, May half-term, which is midterm break. So we went to Sicily in Italy, which I've been all over Italy. I'd never been to Sicily before. It was amazing.
Lovely. And you speak Italian, right? Or some Italian?
Sì, un po'.
So we could maybe crack this whole new audience open, all the Italians interested in doing business in Saudi Arabia. This is good. Big news for the 2030 business. But was it a good trip with family?
It was fantastic. You know, it's different when you travel with kids that start getting older. I have a 14-year-old. I think I've mentioned this before. And I think, you know, he misses his friends. He'd rather probably be hanging out with them, but it's still an opportunity to bond. And we always do, you know, meals together where we also play games. So there was a lot of, you know, geography games, Uno, whatever. Some of them are like, can you remember this person? It's just fun, you know, and then they get into it. So yeah, they miss their friends, but they remember their families cool too.
They remember their families better, right? And then their friends are waiting for them when they get back. That sounds like really good summer fun. I'm glad you enjoyed. We have, Dr. Hannah, a really amazing guest coming up in just a few minutes. Manal Aldowayan, the representing Saudi Arabia at the Venice Biennale right now, which is going on right now in Venice, Italy. Another Italy connection. We will be speaking with her in just a few moments. Last episode, if you missed it, we spoke with Ramzi Abu Hadra, who discussed the origins of Saudi Arabia's banking sector and where it stands today, as well as real estate, and then continuing the theme of real estate. Next episode that will air Thursday, we will have Faisal Durrani on the program. So it's interview and conversation season here at the 2030. We have some really good ones coming up. And as we noted in previous episodes, we're going to start rolling those out now with frequency as we've sort of established ourselves here. And it's great to be with everybody and really great to sort of hear positive feedback and encouragement, especially on social networks as we launch and build this thing out. So thanks to everybody who's done that. And if you haven't subscribed yet or given us a review on any of these platforms, that helps. Of course, every podcast or YouTube channel says that, but it does make a huge difference. So if there's a way, if you're interested in supporting what we do, you can do that, which would be really nice. So
yeah, I just wanted to add on the kind of on our LinkedIn page, there's some comments on the deep dive that I did on the Culinary Academy Zadok, which were great. So I just wanted to say again, like how much it's a great place, and Rania and Dr. Ivan, who is the chairman of the International Advisory Board, are just incredible support. So love the place.
Yeah, if I can add to those positive words, actually, that was really good, Hannah. And I didn't know much about the Academy, but I had known kind of in general that the Saudi culinary scene was really developing. I mean, because I saw it with my own eyes, restaurants and innovative new dishes that were emerging, and the emergence of Saudi fusion, and all of that stuff kind of begins with the development of culinary skills. It's so cool to hear about what Zadok's doing, and I didn't know about it, as I said. So very edifying for me as well. And your deep dives are really good because they're on topics that I'm not completely attuned to usually. So it was really good. So brava, I should say, to you. I want to talk this week, especially since it's so fresh, about Saudi Arabia's planned and now announced sale of $12 billion worth of shares in Aramco. The share sale was teased last week and just completed on Sunday. It was a $12 billion share sale, and it sold out quickly after the deal opened on Sunday, but it's not quite that simple. If you're the one offering shares, typically when you're doing a share sale, you want them to be bought quickly. And in Saudi Arabia these days, IPOs are going quickly. The IPO market is booming, unlike elsewhere in the world. So that's on brand and on trend with what's going on in Saudi Arabia. But when you're selling literally anything, you want it to be bought out quickly. And in this case, the fact that it was bought out quickly, it's a boon for the government, the seller, seeking funds. And newspapers and magazines were reporting that these funds are going to be used to pay for the transformation plan. That's a very general statement. It's hard to really see if that's actually true, but you got to assume that they're raising money for that reason. Anyway, so the government had demand for all the shares in just a few hours, and books were covered within the price range of 26 rials to 29 rials. The Saudi government will still own more than 80% of Aramco at the end of the sale. So the other thing that you're interested in to varying degrees, depending on what you're selling, but in stocks and in this unique case of a state-owned diversified energy company, and in the context of the kingdom's ongoing transformation plan, you're interested not only in whether you sell and how fast, but in who is buying. And according to Bloomberg, the order book reflected a mix of local and foreign investors. And they cited 3 people familiar with the matter who didn't want to put their name on that statement. And, that's interesting because I believe it was 29% of the IPO that Aramco did, which I'm going to come back to in a moment, in 2019, was from foreign investors, with the rest made of local investors. If Saudi Arabia had a dream customer for this offering, it would be blue chip Wall Street. I guess in London, I was looking this up. What's the London equivalent of Wall Street? It's the city, right? Anyway, so you want blue chip investors in this. You might remember Aramco's IPO listing was being planned in 2019. They wanted to do it in either New York or London, or maybe a dual listing. And that was in 2019. Demand for the offering there was somewhat limited. According to the Wall Street Journal, the valuation then was $1.7 trillion. The price was high. Investors could find better value elsewhere. At the time, Shell and BP offered a 6% plus dividend. Aramco's was 3.85%. So Wall Street and London sort of shrugged. So they went with a local listing in Saudi Arabia. Foreign investors ended up buying only 15%, not 29%, of the $29.4 billion IPO on the Tadawul. So 15% foreign investors. On this latest round, while we don't know who or from where foreign investors are, that they have them is good. Aramco is hoping for a juiced up dividend this time that would lure international funds. I am also just reading as of this morning that Amin Nasser is in New York courting investors. This again, according to the Wall Street Journal, after introducing a new performance-based payout last year, the company currently has a dividend yield of 6.2%, way better than those of Exxon or Chevron. However, Aramco still looks a lot more expensive than Western super majors on other metrics such as price earning multiples and free cash flow yields. Again, quoting from the Wall Street Journal, quote, "This valuation premium could hold back returns just as it has since the IPO. Including dividends, Aramco shares have generated annual gains of 4% since the end of 2019, compared with 18% at Exxon and 14% at Total Energies." Wow. This is just mostly because the original listed value of the company was so high. So one analyst kind of said, hey, they're growing into that value over time. It's just going to take some time. Aramco shareholders missed out on the share price rallies and bumper payouts delivered by other major oil companies after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Aramco's total dividends remained flat that year at $75 billion. But the Saudi government was not true for the Saudi government. They were still a big beneficiary of the 2022 high oil prices. Royalties that Aramco pays to Riyadh, the government, more than doubled as these fees increase in line with oil prices. So there's a new policy with this share statement or with this share offering, and Aramco's dividend should hit more than $120 billion this year. And for now, the interests of Aramco's minority shareholders, like the ones who have invested now and invested earlier, and the Saudi government seem aligned now. So both want more cash handed back to owners. But Aramco's free cash flow doesn't cover its dividends. So there's some concern there. They're going to be paying out these dividends. Company has net cash on its balance sheet for now, paying out more than it generates. And that could eventually bring it up against a self-imposed debt to equity limit of 15%. The increased payout may also be hard to maintain if oil prices softened. On that subject, timing is everything in life. OPEC Plus gathered to discuss oil output policy today, Monday, June 3rd. The group agreed to extend its production cuts into 2025 while winding down some of those curbs from later this year. So just kind of interesting stuff coming out on the Aramco share sale. We both did some research on this over the weekend. Really a lot more complex than kind of just the title might say. I mean, great piece from the Wall Street Journal on this. Good news that foreign investors were part of the mix here. Great news that it was subscribed so quickly if you're offering it. And then some mixed news on the mechanics on how the investment round will work and what it means for the kingdom's finances going forward. But still a pretty positive story here in the context, especially as I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, 659 billion riyals, $176 billion in orders for 4 Saudi Arabian companies for IPOs this year. So, I mean, IPOs in Saudi, really hot right now, very hot IPO market if you're listing. And Aramco just saw some success there.
Yeah, it's really exciting news, actually. And I think it's quite common in Saudi for the IPO to sell out kind of instantly.
Especially
it's one
recently,
of those, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But not only recently, like even kind of thinking about certain banks when they went public. I'm thinking of the National Commercial Bank, which is now SMB after it merged with the whichever other bank it merged with. I was always an NCB customer. So for me, that's the one that I remember. But
it's on the tip of my tongue. What is it? It's NCB and was it Samba?
No, it wasn't Samba, was it? Maybe it was Samba.
Yeah, it was Samba. Yeah,
was it?
I'm sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, but yeah.
No,
NCB
thank you
merger,
for reminding me. I can never remember that particular merger, and I can never remember what the new bank is called. I'm like, NCB, no, it's not that. What is it?
SNB.
SNB, because they're so similar. Wow. Okay. We can cut all of that out. Anyway, yes, when NCB went public, it sold out right away as well. People really want in as early as possible when they have a lot of trust in the company. And Aramco is as trustworthy as anything in Saudi. It's synonymous with stability, with efficiency, with capabilities. It is, and then being an EP girl, as you call it.
I like how that's stuck. Yeah.
In the Eastern Province, it's everybody's dream is to work in Aramco. Every child really grows up thinking that's where they're going to go because it's such a huge presence. All companies have contracts with Aramco. They're listed as vendors. If you're selling anything, producing anything in the Eastern Province, you want to be on Aramco's vendor list. So it's definitely a company that people trust. It's also the company that comes in when there are other, issues, right? So if there's a problem or a delay in construction, Aramco will come in and save the day. They're just known for doing things very, very methodically, efficiently, and also transparently. So there was a huge push a few years ago to really make sure that processes were enhanced and made more transparent. They're a big influence on how other companies do business in terms of their ethical practices, in terms of their compliance, their governance structures. So it's, in terms of why it sells out quickly or why it sold out quickly in Saudi, specifically for local investors and why people wanted to be part of it is because they really do trust that the company is stable and it's going to grow and continue to increase its share prices. So yeah, it's interesting to think of that side of who Aramco is inside Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that is interesting. And that speaks to this sort of local appetite for something like this. The international crowd has a very different outlook because they're sort of looking at beyond. I mean, they're looking at Aramco as an oil company that is diversifying into other interests, which really almost every oil company is doing, especially the publicly listed ones. They're investing in other things, and definitely not to the extent that Aramco is doing with all of their different venture funds and other direct investments and co-investments into the space. But what international investors are looking at is they're saying this is an oil company, but the company is in a way an arm of the Saudi government, of the Saudi state. A lot of the Saudi government and the Saudi state gets their revenues from Aramco and its ownership of Aramco. So does the PIF, and there was a recent transfer of dividends of shares from the Aramco to the PIF, in part because of the high dividends that are going to be on offer. And if you're sort of a guy sitting in Wall Street or in London, you're saying, well, what else do we have going on here? We have oil price and we have oil price stability, and Saudi is in control of that through OPEC plus. But we also have the PIF investing in the Saudi economy in ways that may not be solely focused on maximizing returns. They may be doing it so that it's, develops a local economy and may not be the most efficient investment. So there's a lot of externalities when you're looking at it from the outside looking in. But when you're, as you just said very well, when you're a Saudi and you're looking at Saudi Arabia as an investment opportunity, you're saying, hey, there's no better company out there than Aramco. So not surprising that the locals loved this offering. And I expect it to be the same thing going forward for others as well.
Yeah, and to have ownership in the most, relevant company within the country definitely means something to most Saudis. I think that so LSE, by the way, the London Stock Exchange, it is in the city, but yeah, you would just say the LSE or the London Stock Exchange, I think. But yeah, anyway.
But wait, hold on. So what if I want to refer to
the
Wall
place?
Street is not because there's two exchanges on Wall Street, so I don't mean the NYSE or the NASDAQ. I mean the idea of American finance in New York.
I mean, the city.
The city. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can we have an expert come on this show in a few weeks and discuss the various things about London finance? Would be great.
Yes, we can. I think we have somebody scheduled to come on, and somebody I know, sort of, in a couple of weeks. But yeah, it's definitely in the city. And when people talk about working in the city, they instantly think finance, right? Because that's where the financial hub is within London. And then the city is its own kind of borough as well. Borough, I think you would say in American, but the boroughs here. And so it has its own, there's the Lord Mayor of the city of London. And he kind of, I don't know, we could talk about that another time when I have more information, but there's it's his own kind of entity. He makes his own decisions. They invest in things differently. They have to, I think that king needs permission to go to the city from the Lord Mayor. There's something like that. That's what I was trying to remember. But anyway, we're really off topic here.
This is how they always go. They always start that way. You start off topic, or you start on topic, and then it drifts, and then you just cut it off when you're just like, hey, we're now talking about the Lord Mayor inviting the king to go visit London. And also a good time to cut it off
permission.
Is when we don't know. Exactly, yes. So without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Manal Aldowayan. This is a really good one, and she's just brilliant and lovely and just doing some amazing stuff in Venice. It's a cool opportunity.
This is the main stage.
The main stage.
The main stage. This is the main stage.
Could we get Lucian and Hannah to the main stage, please?
Joining us on the 2030 is the incredibly talented Saudi artist, Manal Aldowayan. Manal is representing Saudi Arabia at the Venice Biennale with a multimedia installation entitled Shifting Sands, a Battle Song, showing from the 20th of April to the 24th of November, 2024. She is one of Saudi Arabia's most significant contemporary artists working internationally. Born in Dhahran in Saudi Arabia and currently living in London, she works between the two countries. Her work, which spans various mediums including photography, sound, sculpture, and participatory practice, interrogates traditions, collective memories, and the status and representation of women. Manal's work has been exhibited regionally and internationally in the most prestigious institutions such as the Guggenheim, the Louvre, the British Museum, and many others. Welcome, Manal.
Ahlan sahlan. Thank you, Hannah.
Manal, this is a pleasure. So your educational background is in computer science. How did you get into art?
I originally wanted to study art, but there was no art industry in the area I lived in the region, the whole of the Middle East. There was, of course, in Iraq, Cairo, Syria, but when I grew up, it became war zones. And so in general, there were no institutions, museums, galleries, collectors. And so when I finished high school and approached my family and said I wanted to study art, they're like, and to do what? And so in my mind, I just wanted to get out. I wanted to go to college. So when my father recommended that the future is computers, go study that, I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I have a master's degree in computer science, but always at my heart, I wanted to be an artist. And while I was doing my master's degree, I used to take courses in the evenings at art schools, just thinking, at least I'll feed my soul while I'm doing other things. Never thinking of myself as an artist, never calling myself an artist. And it took me a very long time to do that. And eventually, I started making art. I had my first exhibition at the end of the year from my first master's degree in 2003. And that was sort of that you can still do art even if there's no museums in your neighborhood, or there's a global kind of presence for an artist that is very different than a local skill. And so I started thinking about, I started making art more and more and participating in shows until in 2010 I quit my job and decided to be a full-time artist. And that's when I called myself an artist. I also got a master's in contemporary art in the public sphere from the Royal College of Art. And yeah, that's a journey of education. But I don't regret my computer science background. Scientific background is very important for every woman. I think that it's helped me understand a lot more uh, things that I needed as an artist than an art degree would have ever taught me.
Can you tell us what it's like to represent Saudi today after that journey at the Biennale? And, tell us kind of what are you showing the world there?
The Venice Biennale is sort of a pinnacle of your career moment for many artists. And it is a very complicated platform where nationhood is addressed and it comes face to face with contemporary art and the language of visual art. Uh, to be nominated to represent your country is to be asked as an artist to bring the language of visual arts to a specific location and express what your country is going through at this contemporary moment. And for me, it was a great honor to be chosen to do this. Given what kind of art I've been doing throughout my career, it's not very nationalistic. It's not the safe kind of artist that a person would approach. But I think this is the contemporary moment of my country to be selected to represent in Venice Biennale.
So, what do you think that selection, considering what you just said, says about Saudi Arabia?
I don't know what it would say about Saudi Arabia. I guess it's what you interpret and what you see, because you can always look at the pavilion. And I've had this, somebody approached me at the pavilion and said, "It's a very beautiful artwork, but would this be allowed to be shown in your country?" And so, there's a different reading from a different person every time somebody enters the pavilion and really engages with the ideas that are presented. Shall I tell you what the artwork is about? So the artwork is titled Shifting Sounds, a Battle Song. نطقت الرمال فتحرك الصوت. That's what it's called in Arabic. And I don't translate literal translations always. I give them, I don't think translation works in this kind of situations. Anyway, the artwork is multimedia artwork installation. It has 3 layers. One is the sonic art. So there's a sonic element with sound, and I can go into detail of that. Then there is also the participatory element, which is something I've been doing in my practice where I engage the community to build artworks with me over my career. And finally is the soft sculpture, which is the physical form of the artwork that I presented. And the 3 elements combine to create a landscape that speaks about the status of women today, specifically Arab, and more specifically Saudi women, and how they are portrayed, and the stereotypical language that is being used constantly to describe the Arab woman. And I present a response in the Venice Biennale, and I speak to the global audiences there and say that women have been definitely marginalized by using this kind of language, but the damage is even larger when self-determination, especially for me, myself as an artist, because in the end, this is an artwork that represents my personal experience, that self-determination has been very difficult when you're in constant battle with a conversation that you're trying to defend yourself against all the time. You don't have the time to stand back and reflect and decide, this is where I am, this is who I am, this is what I want to be.
So what did you hear? What did the women tell you? As far as I understand, you connected with over 1,000 Saudi women in Khobar, Jeddah, and Riyadh in a participatory manner. First of all, that sounds like a lot of curation. I would love to hear a little bit more about that and how you kind of were able to gather these stories and what kinds of stories came out of these workshops.
For the workshop, to prepare for it took us about 6 months. There are 3 workshops, each a few hours long, in 3 major cities in Saudi Arabia. To prepare for them, I had always had a dream to do group singing. I've been thinking about group singing for many years. It's just what song, what sound, how to perform it. And it remained in my heart for many years. And when the Venice Biennale opportunity came, I thought this is the moment to do something like this. And I also went back into my archive and thought about a sound that I heard when I was working in Saudi Aramco as an employee for 10 years. I flew out to the empty quarter of Saudi Arabia in the south, Rub al Khali. I was traveling with the geology group. I was a member, and we had tried to move and shift the sands of the empty quarter as a huge group. We were about 30 people, and we sat at the edge of the dune, pushed the sand. Once it turns into a waterfall, it started to make a booming hum. And that remained with me. That remained with me. And I thought about it constantly. And I thought, you know, most women that I've encountered over the years have associated themselves to nature, especially in poetic language. And this is a self-determination language that exists outside of mass media. And, you know, calling yourself palm always, the palm tree is mother. And describing your body as an ocean, thinking about the toughness of rocks. And this is the kind of language that I encountered a lot traveling across my country and within my own family. And so I thought I would love these women to harmonize with the sound of the sand dunes. And so I flew out with my team to the empty quarter with the help of the Minister of Culture, Royal Commissioner Alula, people in Aramco, and we spent the day looking for that sound. I almost lost my studio manager to a sand dune, but we came out intact and we captured the sound. We eventually took that sound to the 3 cities where I met. We just posted online. So how did we gather these women? Is we announced it online on the Ministry of Culture's Instagram. That's it. And for example, Riyadh, within 2 hours, we had 350 registrations. And I was very, very scared because how do you control 350 women and girls? And so I asked the Ministry of Culture to shut down that link because, crowd control and really creating an emotional moment and an engaging moment. You can't have out of control numbers, but anyway, we did. And so 1,000 women showed up in different places. And the places that we decided to do these workshops were women-only spaces. And this is something that I use in my language. And I talk about the counter public, which is where I think a lot of women miss out this energy of women-only spaces and, looking at what stereotypical books and media and how they describe these spaces as oppressed and sad. But in reality, women-only spaces are very empowering. You have multi-generational knowledge, an exchange. Your body exists without a gaze, a male gaze. Your voice has its space. So anyways, women-only spaces is where we decided to do these workshops. And it was the spaces that were given to me for free when I was much younger, 20 years ago, doing my participatory workshops when I was an unknown artist, and the community of women just said, come, you're our daughter, we'll help you out. They didn't know what contemporary art was. They didn't care. They just wanted to support me. And so I went back to them as a gesture of gratitude. So I did one in a charity association in Kubar at Fatat al-Khalij. I did one at a vocational center in Riyadh, which was a Nahda Society. And in Jeddah, I decided to do it in a new space called Jameel Arts Center, Hay Jameel. And that is a space for art. I arrived at those participatory sessions with my desert sound and headphones, and I asked the women to harmonize by humming. And once they started to hum, I felt like that their mouths are closed, and I wanted them to open. And so they started going, ah, and I was like, okay, no, this is out of control. During that workshop, I had actually asked them to write a poem or write a statement to the woman on their right, to the woman on their left, and to themselves, a letter to themselves. And to imagine that these words that they're writing are the words that the poet in a traditional Arabic dance would say to his dancers on his right and left, and they would repeat his poetic lines. And these dances, usually in Saudi Arabia, they're called battle dances, or they have a legendary history of preparing for battle, but now they're used as celebratory dance. So that was the scope that I asked them, and they wrote incredible things. And so I thought, let me grab one of these and ask the girl to, or the woman who wrote it, to say it out loud, and the whole room would repeat it. And that was where the success happened in the participatory session. It was very powerful, energetic. The women that read their quotes read them alone and then heard it repeated to them. Yeah, so this was sort of the structure of the participatory sessions. And of course, there's post-production afterwards, where we took the sounds and turned them into a sonic piece. There was post-production for their drawings and statements, because some people didn't know what to write. So I told them, just draw them. And people drew incredible art. So I decided to use this. All of this shows you that in participatory art, the element of risk, experiment, and coincidence are very, very important, and you have to allow space for it. And because of that, I have an artwork in the Venice Biennale that is very, very powerful.
Can you give us some examples of some of the things that you heard and what they told you?
I can't tell you the examples in full, because most of them were really long letters and statements. And when I chose for them to be read in the sessions, I highlighted the part so that it becomes a chat more than an essay reading. So I received letters from girls telling me this is the first time they ever write a letter to themselves, and they felt gratitude for that. There were statements that were written that they didn't. I remember this beautiful, I'll quote it as like, I didn't know I needed these women until I came to this room. And so this is a girl writing about the experience of sitting next to other women and expressing the same thing about solidarity with the sisterhood, I guess. And there were a lot of saying, know your voice, power to you. Little girls, 12-year-old girls, let me be, thank you, I don't need your help, or things like that. It's very, very sweet and simple. And then there were drawings, and there were stunning drawings. There are artists that came and attended from all over the kingdom. I had people in Jeddah that drove 4 hours from Taif to attend the workshop and drove back on the same day. I was very, very grateful to them. I'm grateful for the response that I got when I asked for them to stand side by side with me.
So your practice in general, and things I've seen, really interrogates traditions, collective memories, and the representation of women. And I would love to hear just a little bit more about how that came through in this art piece.
Collective memory, although I do address collective memory, or in the sense that the way women are represented. So in my practice, I've been using media, so newspapers, and images of newspapers. I've collected them over the years. Back when, for example, my local newspaper had a red line, you're not allowed to put a picture of a woman in the newspaper. And I would collect all the images of how did they represent women then? So it was Black shapes, always in groups, never with identifying features or names. Another project I had done that was called State of Disappearance. Another one called Crash, which looks at women dying in car crashes, but not assessing the crash itself, but just looking at the media and how it covered it, where it was not allowed to mention women's names. So they thought it was better to mention the whole crash details and everybody attending to it and their names, except the woman that actually died in the crash. And for me, that became sort of a language thinking about those kind of artworks where I look deeply into the idea of media representation and its impact on the collective memory of society, it makes it easier for society to dehumanize a segment like women. It would be easier to ignore their needs when they are not identified with names, they don't have a face, they don't have a form. And this translates to many, many other situations, but I'm just using it in Saudi Arabia. But you can talk about the whole concept of statistics and body count and how reporting on wars or climate change and how it reduces things to nothing. And so for me, definitely this artwork was about the collective memory of what the Arab and Saudi woman is today. What will the next generation think of me? And how do I see myself in the coming years? So I need to self-define and leave the language that sort of floats around me, the cacophony of media, I call it, that sort of surrounds me and tells me who I am.
Manal, you were talking about the next generation of women and of artists. These artists and these women are looking up to you now. You mentioned the Biennale is a seminal moment in a career. What would you tell, if you were able to speak with them directly, what would you tell them about pursuing a career in art and pursuing their dreams in art?
Art can be part of your life regardless of your career choice. So creative thinking and making has to be a lifestyle. And if you're a person that wants to express, then it is an amazing vehicle, because for me, I've always been jealous of musicians and writers. I've always wanted to play an instrument, and imagine expressing yourself through music. How insane is that? And through natural talent. And I've never had that talent. I've tried. Also writing, just putting together words and bringing somebody onto a journey and to evoke emotions, to tell a story through that takes me forever to write something. It's very difficult for me. So if you are surrounded with creative thinking in your being, in your existence, then if you are meant to be an artist, then that's the journey you have to take. But it's a very difficult one. So I wouldn't recommend it unless, it is, I cannot live unless I do it. In art school, I remember inviting, I had an open studio. It was called the Arab Art Salon. So we would gather every week in my studio, all the Arab artists in London that were in their master's degree programs. And we'd have conversations, and we invited different speakers. And at one point, we invited market leaders, like the head of an art fair, the head of an auction house. So it was about five different directors of these important places, and they came to speak to us as artists. And one of the things that they said, that in this room, only one of you will continue to be an artist. There's chances of 1% or 10%, I forgot the percentage, but it was basically very few of you will continue as artists. But that doesn't mean it's the end. It's because they all had studied to be artists, but they never made art. What they did is they moved into the art world. And so, an art career does not just mean making art, is also representing as a gallerist, curating, researching art history. You can be, so many things. Restorer, you restore old paintings, or you're a keeper of artwork. So, when my artworks get acquired and go to an institution, I hope the person that receives them is a true artist and loves the work and the expression and takes care of it for the next 100 years, for the next generation. So I say to whoever really loves art and thinks I'm creative and I would love to do this, learn everything, be highly educated, stay curious, and rigorous in your love for contemporary art or modern art, or whatever it is that you, or theater or performance, but really be obsessed. And then different things can happen when you're that passionate and you're not worried about, also you have to have financial stability. So have a job, learn how to earn money, learn how to save money, because art school doesn't teach you about business, or so it's very good for you to work in a place that teaches you some of those skills, writing a good email, putting together a good Excel. So, it's just layers and layers. An artist is not just born out of an art school or a desire to be an artist.
I think your art offers a very innovative critique of some of the change that's been happening in Saudi Arabia. And I'm thinking of older art that you've done in addition to Shifting Sands and what was at the Biennale. But I'm thinking of the series of photos of women, the scrolls with text from religious books and other things. And I feel like this critique of change really does highlight that there has been a shift. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the shift that may be taking place at the moment and how that feels to live through it.
So I like to think that my art is not a tool for critique, but rather posing questions to the viewers. So that I would love for people to come in, see my artworks, walk out and have a discussion, not a conclusion of my statement. I'm not giving you a statement and here, take it and go. In reality, I want to come in and think, what is she trying to say? No, I don't think she's trying to say that. Maybe this. Is it this? Is this what she's talking about, or is it that she's talking about? Maybe both. So I really love to have people experience questions in viewing my artworks. As for my work sort of being contemporary to the moment where it's made and reflects. So, for example, you mentioned very, very old photographs are made about 25 years ago that represented women in jobs when only 3% of women were working. I was also working. And this artwork was very close to my personal experience as an employed woman. There was a debate in newspapers in Saudi and also in our Shura Council about what jobs suit women's nature. And so this was sort of a response or a question asking who decides what suits my nature as a woman, and what really suits my nature as a woman, really, as a job. And I looked around me and I saw women doing incredible things on the ground, not theoretical, and invited them to pose as a participatory act to document this moment. These artworks now, I think, are considered historical. Everything that I had discussed in them is now standard. I think the job market for women has gone up to 30-something%, which is insane, from 3% to jump like that. But definitely half the society is now being employed. Women are being more financially independent. They are more engaged with society. They are represented in decision-making spaces. So historical. These artworks are historical. And every time I make works, the same happens to it. So it isn't really a critique, but it is a document. And I always think that a society or a culture or a nation or people have their historians that write books and put them on shelves. Then you have the journalists that sort of write the day-to-day, and that's where you can really look into the archives of journalism to find out about history. But I think art also fits into this little niche between these two as a cultural language that also documents a moment in a society. It doesn't necessarily answer anything. It takes, you look at a nation's art over the years and you'll understand what's happened to this nation through just visual language. And Venice is a little bit like that because it's one of the oldest biennales. It's been going on for 120 years. A lot of countries have presented artworks every single biennale. And if you look at their representation, the stories, I can give you a side story of Germany, for example. A few years back, the artist that came in found out that the marble that was installed in their pavilion flooring was chosen by Hitler himself, and he had asked that put marble in this space, and so he just destroyed the marble. This is very interesting narrative. So that was his exhibition, the space with the marble completely, uprooted and broken, and you can imagine what kind of artwork was presented when Hitler actually came to visit. And so, art is really a visual language that documents cultural history.
The status of art in the Arab world today, is there something that it needs? Is there some accelerant that can be poured onto it that makes it develop faster or in a better way? Is there any way that it can be, does it have everything it needs to succeed now?
I would rather pour something onto the art scene that slows it down today. Because there's a lot to be said about an art movement that grows organically, thoughtfully, and with multi-layered emotions and knowledge and contributions. So I know there are examples of countries that have presented a contemporary art movement in just 1 decade, like very quick. And built, here's the museum, here's the collector, here's the art fair, here's the auction, and it was shaky. It doesn't have the stability that a very, very solid bottom layer of artists that are thinking and making, hanging out together, and then another layer of artists that are actually being represented and selling, and then another layer of celebrated artists that are in museum collections and preserved. Their art is preserved as a language that represents that institution, and so on and so forth. So for me, I think the art world right now is in Saudi Arabia specifically is very interesting because I have lived in many countries where art is the focus, including the UK. And, I can see how government can impact changes in the way art is made and how artists are treated and how schools are funded. But also I can see, I've lived in countries where it was all subsidized. It was all money was pumped into it and in an intention to just let's get on with it. And I saw it not really move forward the way that everybody imagined. So I think Saudi Arabia has a good approach. I love that we have 3 art historians that were appointed to the Shura Council, Dr. Mahassinan, Dr. Iman Jibrin, and Luna Khazandar, and all women. There are museums being planned, but the collections are being built before they're being built. So this is very important that, there's an understanding that once the museum opens, it's not like we have to borrow artworks from whatever and try to fill the walls quickly. No, there's a considered, thoughtful approach to this museum represents, for example, spices. This museum represents clothes. And there's a deep collection that tells you a history, tells you a story. It's not just like everything packed into one building. I also find art education was very much lacking. I think that is something that we're building on now through the scholarships program that's been going on for 5 years. So, you go learn abroad and come back, which I think is problematic, but you do what you got to do, which is what I did, to go study in Eurocentric universities or North American centric universities or French. It's very hard to understand your history when it's their history that's being presented. And so, but we do have art schools. I know that there's like small pockets, but I think this needs more focus. Academic writing and thinking around art will definitely enhance the quality of art that is made, the conversations, the way collections are built in a nation. So academics, art historians I guess, or students, PhD students, questioning and thinking very deeply about art is important to everyone. And this is happening. I do have a lot of young students and elder students contacting me for their PhD research. And I've been collecting this as an archive in my studio. And I'm telling you that up until 2 years ago, the writing was very surface about contemporary. I was just introducing what I'm doing, or introducing what other artists that I like or know in Saudi Arabia, what they're doing, but nothing in depth. Past 2 years, the academic papers that I've read from different students have been brilliant and really, really inspiring. And I learned things about myself by reading their research. So yeah, academia and art need to be friends. What else? And then, of course, a market. Yeah, people need to buy the artist's artwork. Otherwise, how do you pay the rent? And if you can't pay rent through your art, that means you have to get a job. If you get a job, that means you can't be making as much art, and you cannot be fully, immersed in your creativity. And so, an art market is very hard to develop, and this will take time. It's a language of retail and customer. And I don't know it, and I don't think about it a lot, but it's there, and it's definitely what supports me as an artist. And I think that's an integral part of an art ecosystem.
Maybe one more question. You just said we need good artists. So obviously we're speaking to one of the best, but I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about people who have inspired your work, or people that you admire, and people that are working within the industry in Saudi and around the world today.
Admire and inspire are two different paths. And so admire, there's a lot of people I admire, very brilliant. One of them is you, Hannah, and there's many people I admire. I admire my curators at the Venice Biennale, and Maya Khalil and Jessica Sarasi. They're brilliant. The way they think, the way they introduce ideas, and how the writing is very interesting. And I can go on forever because there's a lot of people that I admire, people I've worked with around the world. As for inspiration in my studio, and usually, and I've been asked this so many times throughout my career, and I always have a different answer. Today, I tell you that definitely I can say I'm inspired by the written novel, poetry, historical curiosity, like through archaeology. I like the mystery, the filling of the gaps, and I feel like archaeologists are very close to artists in the sense that they have to come up with weird things just to, complete a story or use their imagination. These are things that really feed into my practice. Music also. And most of these things, like reading an excellent text or a novel or a poem, these are they are tools that allow my mind to create images as it likes. So it does not give me the image ready. And so I have to imagine the scene that I'm reading, or if I hear a beautiful song, the colors that come into mind. So this is what I think. These are tools that activate the brain for me, and not everyone. Some people jog for creativity. I don't do jogging, but I do love to listen to a good, beautiful song, or read a very, very powerful text, and it triggers something in me. And I don't know how, but it moves me. And sometimes when I'm preparing for a new solo show or a new project, commissions not so much, but when I'm doing my personal work, I spend a lot of time in my library. I just look through pages, read things, have music on, and then see what happens. And usually there's something that triggers me, like it activates me, gives me a feeling. And I think, let me look into this, and then an artwork happens. But admire, I think I admire a lot of women and men that surrounded me throughout my career.
You mentioned the Biennale being the pinnacle of a artist's career. It is, but Do you have ideas or a vision for what you'd like to do in the coming years as an artist, as a person, as a woman?
Yeah, I sat down with my team, my studio team, for a final lunch in Venice after the opening, after everyone left. And I told them, because you have to remember that same year, not only Venice happened, I also opened 2 solo shows in Alula. I did a performance at the Guggenheim. I've not only run workshops, 3 workshops for Venice, but I ran 18 workshops for my land art project, Oasis of Stories at the Wadi El Fen at the Royal Commission in Alula. And so it was an intense year. And so I looked at them and I was like, okay, so all the things that I had dreamed of have been accomplished. What do we dream of next? And so we all started, throwing things there and here. And I think I would love to look at film. This is another form of expression. Because of my experience with the group singing, I love the idea of sonic art and what sound can evoke. So I would like to play more with music. This is sort of building on my jealousy of people play musical instruments. At least now I know there's a digital way to play instruments. I can do that. I have a master's in computer science, guys. And I think for my dreams, I have a bigger one that is still cannot happen, but it will. Is that to have a major museum show in my own country. So I want them to build a museum first, and for me to have that show. And I think that would be a really nice dream to have fulfilled.
Amazing discussion. Manal Aldowayan, one of the world's leading contemporary artists hailing from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Manal, so cool to speak with you. Thank you for joining us on the 2030. It was an honor.
Honor was mine. Thank you, guys.
So let's get to the news. So Lucidia announces a 4-day workweek initiative. Lucidia, which is a prominent Saudi technology company specializing in social media analytics and customer experience management, has made headlines as the first company in Saudi Arabia to implement a 4-day workweek. This progressive move, if you want to call it that, aligns Lucidia with the growing global trend toward more flexible and balanced work schedules.
Yeah, I think I would call it that. This is quite progressive even for the West. I think it would be really nice if the 2030 team could adopt a 4-day work week. That is not in the cards. We are understaffed at this time, and that's okay. But we can't afford to do that. But Lucidia, I think I don't know how to say it. That's cool. The management emphasized the shift is, quote, designed to enhance employee well-being without compromising service quality or productivity. The company believes that a shorter work week can lead to increased job satisfaction, reduced burnout, and higher overall productivity. I know that the first 2 things are true, and the last thing I'm not sure could be true, but maybe. This is happening in some places in the West, but there's also been a backlash to it, and there are a lot more people going into offices these days. What do you think?
Well, there's a lot of backlash there as well, right? Like, I mean, here in the UK, they just made it mandatory for the, who are they? The equivalent of the GA stat, the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, I think. They made it mandatory for people to go back into the office, and people basically just all quit. So I do think that it's controversial everywhere, making people come back because productivity is declining, is not popular with people who have gotten used to working from home and being able to manage schedules that were more challenging in the past. I don't know. I see 2 sides to this coin. As a working mom, I actually appreciate being able to have a very, very flexible schedule. But I also know my limits, my productivity, and I have I've been working for a long time. So I do think it's tricky when you're newly entering the labor market and you're not sure how to be productive and what your productivity, what your limits are, I think it can get tricky without the mentorship that you get from employees, without those extra kind of side conversations that happen. When I'm in an office and around people, I'm really engaged. And when I am affiliated with organizations, which I'm affiliated with many, and I don't go in and see people, it's not the same level of engagement. So, yeah.
Yeah, completely agree with that. There are a lot of things that are true at the same time here.
Yeah.
It's true that having a flexible sort of work schedule and having a lifestyle that allows you to have a family and allows you to have a personal life is good. It's also true that being in an office and being around people, I mean, for me, especially being around people gives me energy. And if I'm not around people, then I get a different kind of energy, the kind of energy that drives me to play golf outside. But I'm at a different stage than those that are entering the workforce that kind of need a little bit of structure. And everybody's different, right? You can also say that it's true that it's all about what you accomplish and not how much time you spend accomplishing it. But there, like you noted, I think very well, there are a lot of things that happen in an office that benefit you that is not part of your normal schedule, is not part of your job. It's interesting in Saudi Arabia too, because Saudi Arabia has a different, first of all, work week, right? I mean, there's Sunday to Thursday and Friday to Saturday of the weekend. We don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. They did change a little while ago, but that's already one kind of day off. I wonder if that actually, not off, but it's off from a, Western way of doing things. I'm wondering, or even Dubai, I'm wondering if that's going to change. So this is interesting, and certainly is going to help Lucidia's recruitment. People are going to say, ooh, 4 is less than 5. Not
Absolutely.
A math person, but I like that. So anyway, this is interesting. And
yeah, go
ahead.
I do think it's interesting because, generally speaking, in Saudi, it is quite traditional in most workplaces. So it is about clocking in and clocking out. It's about, being there physically, even if that's not necessarily what's going to make you productive. I think the majority of companies still think that way about employees, and whether or not they're in the workplace means they're working or they're not working. And technically, the standard work week is actually 48 hours. So you think about like a 40-hour work week, it's actually a much longer work week. And then in Ramadan, obviously that's decreased. But I think it'll be interesting to see if other people follow suit. But maybe in taking this bold step, they'll be the pioneers, and we can look to them for kind of indications of which direction this is going to go in.
Well, employees are always going to say that this is the direction to go in. The employer is going to say, hold on a second. There's the meme going around now on Instagram. I may have even sent it to you, Hannah, but there's this post essentially is this guy saying, I run a hedge fund in Wall Street, and I sent an analyst to Austin, Texas, where a lot of these companies are moving their headquarters. And I had the analyst walk around a park in the middle of the day and ask all the people that were sitting out in the park in the middle of the day on a blanket, tanning and having a picnic, middle of the work week, where they worked. And then he took all that information and shorted all the stocks of those companies. And he's up like 800% this year. And it may not even be true. It's kind of like a meme. So I can't investigate that fact. But there's that attitude, right? Where it's like, hey, this is not, we need to get things done. And so you can kind of see that side of things as well. But yeah, there's interesting data, right? We have sort of 62% of business owners support making the 4-day work week a federal requirement. Is that in the United States? That's in our notes here? Because that's interesting.
That's kind of more of a like a global outlook. I know the World Economic Forum has done a lot of research on this area. And when you think about the future of work, the 4-day work week is something that they think about quite a bit and discuss quite a bit. So yeah, I think that these are more global statistics. This was a survey that was done, I want to say maybe by the World Economic Forum, and if not, it's a US-based one, but it's just kind of in comparison to kind of the Saudi context, thinking about other contexts as well.
Munshaat runs Funding Week for SMEs. The event was held at Munshaat's support centers in Riyadh, Medina, Jeddah, and Al Khobar, Eastern Province, with the participation of 43 government entities and funding institutions that showcase their services, initiatives, and funding products. This took place last week from the 19th to 23rd of May. During Finance Week, Munshaat, the Small and Medium Enterprises General Authority, marked several significant accomplishments, underscoring its commitment to bolstering the SME sector in Saudi Arabia. The event was instrumental, they say, in providing valuable support and resources to a large number of beneficiaries, fostering collaboration among stakeholders, and enhancing the knowledge base of entrepreneurs and SME owners.
Yeah. So in case people aren't familiar, Munshaat is the Saudi Small and Medium Enterprise Authority. It operates independently under the Ministry of Commerce with the mission to regulate, support, and develop the SME sector in the kingdom. It is, a big part of the vision because of the belief that small and medium enterprise growth is going to drive the economy. One of the goals in the vision is to raise the contribution of SMEs to the national GDP from 20 to 35%. There were, I think, 3,500 beneficiaries during this week, and the assistance ranged from financial advice to business development services. And it's interesting because Munshaat really do offer a lot of support in kind of how to set up your company, how to do a feasibility study, how to balance your books and that kind of thing. So they do try and offer a lot of nuts and bolts on how to run your business, how to start a business, etc. There were 47 educational workshops at this event throughout the week, and they covered all sorts of different things, including technology adoption, marketing, enhancing skills and knowledge, and more.
Yeah, shout out to Munshaat. They're doing really good work. They have a very broad mandate. They're sort of like there's a lot of stuff they're doing with SME development, and that's not just startups, but they also have a mandate to deal with startups. I believe that they financially support SVC. Could be wrong about that. It's SVC, but SVC is not a PIF fund. So they're kind of like they're heavily involved in things like LEAP, and then they do these smaller events where they're bringing together sort of the community and helping the community develop their SME things. And again, it's not just tech and startups, it's small businesses. So the SBA is the equivalent in the United States, but in Saudi Arabia, Munshaat has a kind of a different and a little bit more of a adaptable, more powerful mandate. Shout out to Sami Al-Wahdan. I'm definitely butchering your name, Sami, sorry, but he's such a good dude, and I've worked with him a bunch. Really great guy. And just what they're doing, especially in Riyadh too, from what I can see, is really powerful in helping these small businesses get established and enter the ecosystem. So good for them.
Yeah, no, and when I was involved with the Chamber of Commerce, we would, as members of the Young Business People's Council, we would attend these events and kind of actually co-design the experiences, a lot of times offer the workshops. So there's definitely a lot of involvement of existing companies providing training and mentorship. So you really are, Munshaat is organizing, orchestrating, but bringing everybody together, everybody that's in the business space together to really kind of share knowledge and showcase what's possible and how you can really leverage existing kind of experiences to showcase what you can achieve and accomplish by starting a new company. So there's some real live examples, and a lot of evidence really shows that when you have kind of mentors in that space and also role models, you can really succeed in establishing a new business. It's easier to think about where you might end up. So Saudi achieves over 20 awards at the World Summit on the Information Society Forum. They recently achieved significant recognition at the World Summit on Information Society, over 20 awards. The event held in Geneva honored the kingdom for its innovative contributions to the field of information communication technologies, and they received accolades in several categories, highlighting advancements in digital infrastructure and services.
Yeah, big wins for the Saudi Data and AI Authority, which won a prize for its National Data Bank, NDB, which I've heard about, and Estishraf. Estishraf, thank you. Probably should have had you pronounce that first, which aims to enhance data quality and international participation. This is just a good story. I mean, good for them. Is there anything about the delegation size that went to Geneva to receive this? But 20 awards anyway, so very good.
Yeah, I'm not sure about who was there, but it really does kind of underscore commitment to advancing ICT capabilities. And as we said, Saudis are quite adept at using AI, according to a survey that we mentioned in a previous episode.
And anecdotally.
Even if we're not sure where AI is going and how it is relevant to every specific industry. Obviously, it is incredibly relevant to all of them, and we need to think about the implications of using AI across all sectors.
Big upgrades at the King Abdulaziz port in Dammam, which is probably excited for our local EP expert. The Saudi Ports Authority, Mawani, is overseeing a significant upgrade and expansion of 2 container terminals at the King Abdulaziz port. This initiative, valued at over 7 billion rials, or $1.86 billion, is a build, operate, transfer BOT concession with the Saudi Global Ports SGP. The project aims to boost the port's container capacity by 120%. That's a lot. Raising it to 7.5 million TEUs, thereby strengthening the nation's supply chains and boosting foreign trade. Cool.
We have spoken in the past about the Jeddah port being one of the largest in the region. So it's great to hear that the Dammam port is getting an upgrade in the Gulf. I do pass by this port and live very close to it, actually, when I'm in Khobar and Dammam. So it's great to know that there is an upgrade on the way. The project is going to refurbish facilities, expand container yard, include the creation of a sandbox area to test new technologies. And the developments are in line, obviously, with Vision 2030, which aims to optimize port operations and logistics as a whole within the kingdom.
So is this part of like the Saudi U.S. kind of Silk Road, the new Silk Road, or because that was part of the whole the rail network. It's kind of slowed down a little bit with the instability, but I mean, Dammam and Al Khobar are important ports on the other side of Saudi Arabia that are a lot closer to the east. So, as you know very well, I don't need to tell you this, but maybe people listening and our American audience just kind of get their bearings. Seems like a good and significant upgrade because there's a lot of investment going into other ports, as you mentioned, in the west, in Jeddah, and of course you have Neom, and then the Red Sea is being developed, and then we know they're investing heavily in railways as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not really sure.
It is definitely closer to the Asian side, right? So basically, it is on the Persian Gulf, if you're from anywhere in the world other than Saudi Arabia, or the Arabian Gulf, as we call it. And so you're on the same body of water as the UAE, Kuwait, and Iran. So it is definitely an accessible port. It's a really important one. It connects to the Gulf of Aden into the Indian Ocean. So.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look to see if I can find that map. It does look like that's part of it, but the new Silk Road map that I was referring to that was in my brain somewhere and now is on the internet, looks like it goes in kind of through the UAE and then by rail or by car through Saudi Arabia. So this may be another port, but this is a very small map, so I can't really zoom in. Anyway, no value added provided there, but definitely good for Saudi Arabia to make these investments into their supply chains and infrastructure, especially as they're starting to manufacture more. We know that there was a lot going on this week with a deal with Alat and Lenovo. I mean, that huge PIF fund is making investments into the development of, things that can be manufactured in Saudi Arabia. So anyway, cool news item that I did not see. Well,
did you
well done.
Want to talk about Lenovo?
Yeah, let's talk about Lenovo. Lenovo plans to sell $2 billion worth of zero coupon convertible bonds to Saudi Arabia's wealth fund, part of a larger strategic pact with the tech-hungry kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Lenovo said it will issue bonds to Alat, an investment firm wholly owned by the PIF, at an initial conversion price of $10.42 per share. those are Hong Kong dollars. I do not have the conversion rate built into my brain. That's roughly 12% discount to Lenovo shares closing price the previous day. So the Saudis got a deal here on that, and really an interesting next move for Eilat that moves it more toward manufacturing locally in Saudi Arabia. Very cool.
Amazing. And then finally, Saudi university students are now going to be offered training before they graduate. So this initiative, which was developed by the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Development and the Human Resource Development Fund as well, including the Ministry of Education, requires students to undergo 6 months of training. The goal is to better prepare them for the labor market and enhance their career opportunities. And the decision aims to bridge the gap between academic learning and practical workplace skills, which is something that you hear quite often when you're talking about Saudi education outcomes. So this is integrating the training period into university curriculum. I think this is really interesting considering that people constantly are saying that universities are no longer preparing people for the workplace. But there still is this divide between what you do in kind of academic university settings versus vocational training, which is more skills directly for the labor market. But I do think this is a really interesting development, and I think most companies would probably really welcome this.
Absolutely, and I think people should welcome this too. This is in the US especially, this is something that people talk about, mostly jokingly, that they took calculus 2 and they took advanced geometry as an 8th grader and then don't know how to file taxes, don't understand how that works and what a refund is and how to set up a business. I mean, all these things, it's like you could learn in a few months, and the focus seems to be on not that. So this is good. It's like if there was like a school of hard knocks and you wanted to learn about the bare bones about like how to manage a checkbook and how to things like taxes. I mean, this is good, and this benefits companies that are going to be hiring these people that have more well-rounded employees that are not as just focused on one or two subject matter things that they were experts on. And it's also great for the people to have a really good sense on how to, what life is all about. So that's probably an oversimplification, but I think this is good.
I could go into this in great depth, but
I'm
because
sure you could. Yeah, I was like, I'm talking, Hannah should be talking. Yeah.
This is just the news bit, and we're just giving a really quick overview. But I will just add one thing, which is it is going to be tricky to find placements for all of the students because running an internship program is not that easy. So companies with 50 or more employees are encouraged to participate in this. However, if you don't have a really good kind of infrastructure where you know how to train and really help and mentor students and give them real tasks, it's going to be tricky. And there have been initiatives like this in the past, but I still think no matter what, if you're not able to graduate without that, then hopefully universities are going to work very closely with entities that can provide that training. And then, hopefully that will be facilitated by the ministry and the HRDF, which the Human Resource Development Fund, which is that link between private sector and the Ministry of Human Resources. So I still think it's an excellent initiative. And students really do need to be prepared for the real world.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks to Manal Aldowayan for joining us today. This is really a great episode. More like this coming. We're building the momentum. So thanks to everybody else as well for being with us.
Thank you.